That feeling, it was like a slap to the face, leaving me unable to breathe. I stood right outside the cafe window, my hand still tightly holding the bouquet of flowers, watching Sarah, my wife, sitting across from another man. She was laughing, a laugh I hadn't heard in a long time. My eyes were glued to the scene, my chest tightening as if someone was squeezing the life out of me, her hand resting on his. I couldn't look away. Before we dive into this dramatic story, let us know where you're watching from. And if you find this story captivating, don't forget to hit subscribe. We had a perfect life, or at least I thought so. Long evenings spent together, sharing dreams, plans for the future. Everything seemed perfect. But now, seeing this scene, I knew it was all just a facade that I had trusted. I stood frozen, my mind spinning. Was I seeing this wrong? No way. Sarah and the other man, they were sitting so close, talking, and most of all, laughing as if the whole world was just them. That feeling, that intimacy, hit me like a stab to the heart. No matter how much I wanted to deny it, I knew deep inside this was happening right in front of me. My heart pounded in my chest. I walked into the cafe with a hollow feeling. The flowers in my hand felt like they weighed 1,000 tons. No one noticed me as I approached their table. Only when Sarah's eyes suddenly met mine did her smile vanish in an instant. She pulled back a little, quickly withdrawing her hand from his. "Mark," Sarah whispered my name, her voice laced with confusion. She quickly stood up, her eyes searching mine as if hoping for an explanation, but I said nothing. I simply pulled a piece of paper from my pocket. I quickly scribbled a few words on it. "Don't come home." I placed the note in front of her, then turned and walked away without saying another word. I could hear her calling my name, but I didn't stop. The lump in my throat made it impossible to breathe. Was this it? Had it all ended? We had everything, and now, in the blink of an eye, it was all shattered. The front door opened, and Sarah walked in. I was sitting silently on the couch, holding my phone tightly, trying not to let my emotions take over. The house still held all the things we had built together over the years, the couch we sat on every night, the painting she had chosen for the living room. Everything was still calm and quiet, but inside me, everything had fallen apart. Sarah stood in the doorway, looking at me with no trace of regret. She didn't bring the note I had left, nor did she seem sad or apologetic. She just looked at me, her gaze neutral, as if nothing had happened. I couldn't take it anymore. The frustration, the anger rising inside me, I couldn't hold it in. "We need to talk," she said, her tone calm. "We need to talk? What exactly are we going to talk about, Sarah?" I cut in. "About how you laughed and held hands with that man at the cafe? Or about how you betrayed me?" She stood there, looking at me, her expression unchanged, but in her eyes I began to see hesitation. She took a small step back, as if trying to maintain distance, afraid that the truth might break her down. "I can explain," she said, her voice choking. "You don't understand. Really, you don't understand." I laughed bitterly, but it was a bitter laugh. "Don't understand? Then explain to me what I saw, what you and him were doing in the cafe, sitting hand in hand, laughing like lovers. What are you talking about?" Sarah turned away, closing her eyes for a moment as if trying to come up with a reasonable explanation. But then she turned back, sighed, as if accepting that the truth had been exposed. "He's just a friend, Mark. We were just talking about work." I just looked at her, my eyes no longer filled with love, but with anger. "A friend?" I repeated, my voice sharp as a knife. "You're not the only one with a job, but there you are, holding his hand, laughing with
Him like he's the one you love.
Do you think I don't know what's going on? Sarah paused, her face showing a slight shift, but she quickly regained her composure. Mark, you're overreacting. Really, you don't understand. Unable to hold back, I stood up and walked closer to her. Don't understand? Then explain this to me, I shouted, pointing to the table where my phone was. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I was too stupid to see what was going on? She stepped back slightly, but just a little. Her eyes quickly scanned the photos and texts I had, printed from my investigation, but she didn't say anything. Sarah's eyes no longer held confidence, but fear.
Don't do this, she whispered, but her voice lacked the strength to convince me. You think you can hide this from me forever? I emphasized every word, feeling a fire building inside me. You might have fooled me once, but you can't. Fool me forever. Who is he, Sarah? Who is he that you're willing to throw me away for?
The room was silent, only the sound of our breathing filling the space. Sarah looked at me as if unable to find the words to defend herself. Finally she spoke, her voice soft but firm, as if ready to face the consequences. All right, he's the
man I love. Love, Mark. But I didn't want you to know, not because you don't deserve to know, but because I was afraid of losing you. I looked into her eyes, not with anger, but with a deep sadness. It felt like the entire world was collapsing around me.
So what have we been doing here, Sarah? What was our 10 years of marriage? You think you can just walk away from this without paying the price? Sarah looked at me, her eyes now full of confusion and guilt, but I didn't need her forgiveness anymore. I just wanted her to understand that what she did could never be fixed, and I was no longer someone who would keep enduring it. I didn't want to hurt you, Mark, but I didn't know what else to do.
Then don't do anything anymore, I said, no patience left. Just leave. Sarah, you've made your choice. Now it's my turn. Those words, even though I knew they wouldn't fix anything, at least gave me back a piece of the self-respect I had lost.
The sense of loss was still there, but the release was starting to come. Sarah stood there, her eyes filled with tears, but without regret, only silence. She turned away, not saying a word, quietly walking upstairs, each step feeling like a knife to my heart. That silence, I couldn't bear it. I stood there in the cold living room, watching Sarah's figure fade away, and asked myself, where did I go wrong? But just as she was heading upstairs, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I hesitated, but then opened it. You did the right thing, Mark. She doesn't deserve you. The short words hit me like a heavy punch to the chest. I read the message several times, wondering who had sent it, how they knew about my situation. My finger trembled, but I couldn't stop myself. I read on. I've known her for a long time.
I have proof of what she's been doing. You should check your email. A new wave of emotion surged inside me, a mix of confusion and a slight sense of hope, as if finally I would get answers to the questions that had been haunting me. I spent
the entire day sitting there, my hands glued to my phone, waiting for further explanations from this mysterious person. An email appeared in my inbox titled "The Truth About Sarah." I couldn't hesitate any longer. I opened it. Immediately my heart raced as the images appeared before my eyes. There were photos of Sarah and the other man, Tom, taken in various locations. They hadn't just met at the cafe, they had been together at a hotel, holding hands, walking around, laughing like there was nothing to hide. These photos weren't casual encounters, they weren't just work meetings as Sarah had tried to convince me. This was betrayal, deep and ruthless. Attached was a video, a blurry video, but I could still recognize Sarah's voice as she sat next to Tom in a hotel room. Mark will never find out. He trusts me too much. He thinks we're just friends. Those words slapped me in the face. I felt suffocated, trapped in a box. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but the evidence was too clear, too painful. There was no denying it anymore. A mix of anger, humiliation, and heartbreak surged inside me. I gripped my phone so hard, my hands were drenched in sweat. How could I face this? How could I keep looking at the face of someone I once loved, a face now filled with lies and deceit? My anger flared, my vision blurred, my throat tightened. These images didn't just shatter my trust, they destroyed everything we had built over the years, a life that seemed perfect, now reduced to rubble. Sarah, what has she done to us, to me? I looked out the window, where the city lights flickered in the distance, but inside everything felt dark. My head felt like it was going to explode with the chaos of thoughts. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing, but maybe there was no other choice. Everything pointed to Sarah not only deceiving me emotionally, but also betraying everything I once believed in. Just as I was about to close the laptop, another message appeared. You need to know more. This time, I didn't hesitate. I opened it immediately and saw a contact list with the name Tom Sarah listed among recent calls. Tom was the one she had been spending time with all along. I couldn't stop staring at it. My heart sank, unable to fathom how deeply Sarah had deceived me. The pain kept lingering. I had never imagined I would face this betrayal, but now nothing could change it. The unspoken question still remained, but at least I had an answer to what had been happening in my life, a painful answer, but a very clear one. I looked back at the room. This house no longer felt like my home. Sarah wasn't the woman I once loved. She had changed, and so had I. The entire house was silent, and I was still sitting there, staring blankly at my phone screen, the evidence of the betrayal clear before me. It felt like a punch to the chest, leaving me unable to breathe. Everything I had trusted, everything I had fought to protect, now felt meaningless. Sarah hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She had disregarded the respect we had built over 10 years. My eyes never left the laptop as the messages, photos, and videos continued to scroll. The feeling of defeat, of being deceived to the core, was so heavy that I couldn't accept it. But one thing was clear. I couldn't let this end here. I couldn't let them keep living in lies without facing the consequences. Suddenly, my phone vibrated again. It was a message from an unknown number, just like before. This time, the message was short. You should meet me. I have the information you need. My mind spun. A part of me wanted to delete the message, to ignore it all, to live in self-deception and silence. But another part of me urged me to know more, to fully understand the truth. I couldn't back down from this betrayal, and now I had to face it, no matter what lay ahead. I replied to the message, "Where do we meet?" "A park near your house, 3 house p.m. Without thinking too much, I quickly prepared. My mind was still filled with chaotic thoughts about Sarah, Tom, everything that had happened. But one thing was clear in my head. I needed to know more. I felt that I had to do something, to take action. I couldn't just stand there and watch my life be stolen away day by day. When I arrived at the park, I saw a man wearing a black hoodie sitting on a bench shaded by a tree. I walked closer, my nerves tight like a drawn string. When he looked up, I didn't recognize him immediately, but he looked at me and said, "Mark, right?" I nodded, wondering who he was and why he had the information I needed. He motioned for
me to sit down. Though I didn't want to, I knew I had no other choice.
My friend told me to send you this, he said, sighing. You need to know about Sarah and Tom. He handed me his phone. On the screen were conversations between Sarah and Tom, messages full of innuendo, not just harmless conversations, like she had claimed. They talked about plans, evenings together, promises, and even the sweet words Sarah had reserved for Tom. He wasn't just a friend, not just someone she went to talk to. They had a deep relationship, secret meetings, and it was clearer than ever. "So who are you?" I asked, my voice tense. "Why are you helping me?" He looked at me seriously, then replied gently, "I'm Ben. I used to work with Sarah. I know she's not who you think she is. I just want to help you see the truth." The truth, that word hit me like a direct blow. It was like a door was opening, but I wasn't sure if I had the strength to walk through it. What else didn't I know about Sarah? What had she been doing all this time? "What can you do for me?" I asked, my hope waning, but I still needed to understand everything. Ben handed back his phone, which contained more messages from an unknown number, messages from Tom. But not just their conversation, there were pictures of Sarah and Tom, even a photo of her laughing at dinner with Tom, looking at each other, like they were truly in love. "I don't want you to rush into anything," Ben said, pausing briefly, then continuing. "But I think you need to face this truth. You have the right to know everything. You also can't let yourself be lied to forever." I looked at the pictures, my heart tightening, but I couldn't look away. Anything could happen, but the truth was something I had to face. The feeling was no longer anger, it was emptiness, questions without answers, a feeling that couldn't be filled. Could I gather the strength to stand up and face the person I once
Love the most? This feeling made it hard to find any answers. That feeling stayed with me as I stood up and thanked Ben. Part of me wanted to run away from it all, but another part pushed me forward towards something I couldn't change. I knew
the truth now, and it was time to make a decision. I left the park, but my mind was still restless. I sat in my car, the dim streetlights casting shadows on the windshield. Though the city outside was busy, everything inside me felt silent, like a deep pit I couldn't escape from. I felt like I was drowning in lies and guilt, and it seemed like everything around me had turned to darkness. Sarah had betrayed me, and now I had to face the consequences of everything she had done. I no longer felt anger, no longer hatred. Instead, there was emptiness, the shattering of trust that had existed for 10 years. I might have tried to overlook
it, but the truth was too clear. I couldn't just sit by and ignore it.
Sarah and Tom needed to pay, and I knew I couldn't let them continue living in deceit without facing responsibility. They needed to face what they had done. I decided to call Ben. He had helped me realize everything, and I knew I needed more help. I couldn't let Sarah continue escaping the truth, couldn't let Tom keep living in his lies. After a few calls, Ben agreed to help me gather more information. He was ready to send me more undeniable evidence of Sarah and Tom's relationship. Secret meetings, flirtatious messages, and this time we wouldn't just confront them. We would bring the truth to light. The feeling inside me now wasn't pain, but determination. I couldn't let them treat me like a fool, like I didn't deserve respect. I needed to protect myself, and I wouldn't let this betrayal end without consequences. Knew Sarah would come to pick up her things. She had texted me this morning saying she would come for what was left. I was ready. Everything had been carefully planned. When Sarah walked in the door, she tried to maintain her usual calm demeanor. She brought a small suitcase, silently stepping into the living room. I looked at her but said nothing, keeping quiet. The feeling in me wasn't anger now, but resolve. I didn't want to say another word. Actions would speak louder than words. "Mark, I'm here to pick up my things," Sarah said, her voice flat, not in a hurry. I replied, my voice firm and resolute. "We need to talk first." She paused, raising an eyebrow, and I knew she was prepared for this confrontation, but I was prepared for much more. I wasn't just going to talk about what had happened, but about the truth behind her secretive relationships. This feeling made it hard to hold back anymore. I pulled out the documents, the photos, the messages, and the calls between her and Tom.
"Sarah," I said, my voice cold, "do you think I didn't know? Do you think I would just sit here and forgive you again?" Sarah stood still, her eyes scanning the evidence before her, unable to find words to defend herself. She stood there, but
I didn't see regret, just silence. She didn't say anything, and then she looked at me as if searching for an escape. "I didn't want to hurt you, Mark," she whispered, but her voice no longer had the confidence, only fear.
"I was wrong, but I don't know what to do anymore." I took a deep breath, not letting my emotions take control. "No, Sarah, don't say that. You've done everything you could to destroy everything. You've betrayed me. You've betrayed my trust. And now you'll have to face the consequences." But I didn't stop there.
I had enough information to make sure this betrayal wouldn't be contained within the walls of this house. I called a friend, someone who could help me bring the truth to light. "Of course," I said over the phone, "let's make everything public. People need to know. Tom can't continue deceiving his family like this. Sarah can't continue living in lies. This is no longer just my issue." Sarah looked at me with wide eyes, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard, but I didn't. Kare. I was too tired to worry about forgiveness. The lies had gone too far, and I couldn't let them continue. "You will have to face the truth, Sarah, and everyone will know what you've done." My voice was firm, no hesitation left. She didn't react anymore. We stood there facing each other as if time had stopped. I could feel the tension in the air, but I knew now was the time for me to stand up and protect myself. When Sarah left, without saying another word, I felt a part of me was liberated, but another part deep inside still felt empty. This wasn't over, we couldn't go back, but I would keep moving forward down this road because I knew the truth needed to be known, and only the truth could bring full freedom. The days after that confrontation, the atmosphere in the house remained quiet, but no longer with the warmth
of family I once knew. Every morning when I woke up, I still had to face the emptiness with questions that had no answers.
Sarah had left, taking with her painful memories and disappointments that I couldn't erase. This house was no longer where I sought peace, but where I had to struggle with the brutal truth of my own life. But it seemed that in the silence and pain, I found something more important. It was clarity, the ability to realize that I had the power to make decisions about my own life. I was no longer the weak man constantly afraid of betrayal. I had reached a transformation within myself, a rebirth. There were days when I still sat on the old sofa, staring out the window, reflecting on what had happened. I recalled the happy days, the moments that seemed insignificant but were the things I had lost. But then I realized, no matter how beautiful the past was, I couldn't let it hold me back. I had to learn to move on. One morning, I decided to sell the house. The feeling when signing the sale contract was truly strange. It was as if I was leaving a part of myself behind, but also as if I was opening a new chapter. This chapter no longer had Sarah, no longer had the beautiful memories that now only caused me pain. I moved to a small apartment in the city centre, a place where I could start fresh, where I wouldn't have to face the shadow of the past. The first day in my new apartment, I no longer felt the sense of despair or pain. Perhaps the change in environment had brought me some peace. The new furniture, without the painful memories, made me feel like I was being reborn. Although I still couldn't completely forget Sarah, at least I knew I could stand up on my own and take control of my life. During this time, I received a message from Michelle, Eric's wife. After our meeting at the cafe, we had kept in touch and talked quite a bit. She said she was seeking justice and wanted to bring everything to light. She was grateful that I helped her realize the truth. She also said she no longer wanted to live in deceit. Mark, I understand how you feel. I know we've both been through some very difficult things, but if we don't take action, everything they've done will have no consequences. We can't let them keep living in the dark, Michelle said over the phone. I couldn't do anything but agree. What Sarah and Eric had done not only destroyed our lives, but could also affect others, and I couldn't let them live without facing responsibility. Together, with Michelle, we decided to take action. We contacted the authorities, gathered more evidence, and filed a complaint about Sarah and Eric's unethical behavior. It wasn't easy, but I felt like I was doing the right thing. In the end, Eric was fired from his company, and Sarah also had to face the truth about her actions. When these results became public, I didn't feel joy. There was no sense of victory. I only felt a release, as if I had shed a heavy burden. Revenge didn't bring happiness, but justice gave me a peace I had never had before. One afternoon, Michelle and I sat down for coffee, sharing everyday stories, our new steps in life. She talked about how she was learning to forgive herself and starting fresh. I saw her as much stronger. She was also walking her own path, just like me. We had both lost so much, but now we were both finding peace within ourselves. Mark, Michelle said as she looked at me, we can't let the past define us forever. What matters is that we keep living, keep loving ourselves, and find a new path. She was right. I had learned that forgiveness isn't for the other person, but for freeing yourself. I couldn't let this past control me. Life will never be perfect, but I had been able to move past the hardships and find strength within myself. As I looked out, the window, the sunset casting light on the street ahead, I realized something. The truth, no matter how painful, is always the key to freedom. I was no longer the man trapped in the past. I was the man opening up a new future. And I knew this was just the beginning of the life I truly deserved. Please hit like if you resonate with Mark, who faced betrayal and found the strength to rebuild his life. Share if you believe this story needs to be spread to those going through difficult times in their relationships to help them understand that no matter how crushed they feel, the truth and resilience are always the key to starting over. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on the next journeys. Every click you make fuels us to continue bringing you more meaningful stories. Thank you for always watching and supporting.